My name is Guinevere Hall. What do you? I don't know what you want me to say. I own Typeface Books, and I'm 53. Does that help?
Yep, absolutely. Can I start by asking how you came about the name for your shop?
Well, I mean, I bought, so Typeface Books used to be called the Well Bookshop, and it had been going for about 20 years. But I'd never heard of it before. And it was, I mean, it was in my area, and I love bookshops, and I'd never even heard of it before. So when it came up for sale, I had all these plans and everything, and I wasn't attracted. The name didn't mean anything to me. The name was actually, they used to have it was called the Well because it was the Well Read, and they had a cafe that was the Well Fed, and they had a travel agency, I think, that was called the Well Traveled or something. So that's what it was, why it was the Well, but it didn't have any meaning for me. So I decided when I took it over that I was going to change the name and sort of rebrand it, because it was quite an old-fashioned bookstore, and they didn't have any online presence or anything like that, and had been losing money. So I thought, I'm going to revamp this and come up with a new name and new branding and everything. So I had a short list, well, actually a long list. Everyone gave me all sorts of different names. And then it came down to a short list of the ones that I could actually have, meaning, they were available to get a website name and weren't used by any other company. And I think I had about maybe 4 or 5 different names on that list. And then everybody, I was getting people to vote for them and give me and of course everyone liked a different name. So in the end, I just randomly chose one because I just couldn't be bothered, doing that process anymore. And then once I'd chosen the name, it was kind of then easy for me to come up with the style and, sort of a branding from that.
That's fantastic. So then the next question is, when did you take over and revamp it as Typeface? When did that happen?
So I took over on January the 6th, 2020, and then basically revamped the shop. So new floors and lights, because it was old carpet. It had, fluoro lights, like in an old school, and it was painted a horrible sort of greeny, yellowy color. So repainted, new wooden flooring, new light fittings, new branding with signs and everything, and reopened in February 2020.
So there's obviously a question about the issue of 2020 to be asked, but let me
Yes.
let me first ask about your process of thinking about the physical setting up of the space. What was your aim for your choices in doing all of those changes?
I wanted it to have a warm and cozy feel to it. So not that it wasn't cozy before, it's probably over cozy with I actually removed 7 bookcases.
Wow.
So which sounds crazy, but I really opened it up. But it's still got like little nooks and everything, but she had it so that you couldn't even see the front door from where the till was, because the till's at the back. And everybody that came through just said, wow, it's just so much better now with the open space. But my thinking was also to open it up so I could have events and be out. So it was very small, very tight, sort of only one person could get past a bookshelf at a time. So the thinking was to open up. It's quite a small bookshop, to be said. I think it's no more than 40 square meters, probably less than that.
Right.
Very small for a bookshop. But my feeling was I wanted it to be warm, so I did the sort of warm wooden flooring. Well, it's not real wood, and then rugs and the lights, because they were the fluoro sort of strip lighting before. I really wanted to get rid of them and have some warmer lights, places for people to sit. I just wanted it to feel welcoming.
And before 2020, were you in the book trade or the retail trade? How did you get to the point of buying it then?
No, I was actually a real estate agent for 10 years.
Right.
And people kind of go, what? With real estate, I mean, I love houses and I love looking through other people's houses and I love talking to people, but real estate's a real cutthroat business, and you kind of I made a lot of money, which allowed me to buy the shop, and has allowed me to live off that savings for now. But it was never really something that I loved doing. But it was really good around children and having hours that allowed you to go and pick up the children from school, be home when they got home from school. If they had to have a sick day off, it was very easy just to work from home. It was easy to go to their sports, things. I would say, oh, I'm in a training course all day or something, because I was, you could make up excuses. You can really set your own times. But saying that, I was also having to work all weekends, every evening. So I kind of got sick of that after 10 years. And people used to say to me, what would you do? What would, if you could do anything in the world, what would you do? And I always said I would own a bookshop. But the other part of that was, and be wealthy enough that I never had to sell a book. Unfortunately, I never got that second part. But when I left real estate, and I was actually unemployed. I got another job, which I hated because it was a sort of a 9-to-5 office job. And I thought, no, I can't do this. And then I was unemployed for about 4 months. And I decided that I didn't, because real estate's you're really quite independent. You sort of are almost like working for yourself. And I thought, I can't work for someone else who has to tell me what to do. So I thought, I'm going to look for a business. And I looked around for businesses, and I actually put an offer in on a gardening business. But then this bookshop came up, and I just backed out of that one and went, oh God, even though I knew that they weren't making any money, they'd been losing between 10 and 15 grand a year.
Wow.
But saying that, she was independently wealthy and she employed people in the business. So she was, spending 50 grand a year on wages. So I thought, well, if I just do it by myself and I take the loss out of that, that's about 35 grand a year. And I can live on 35 grand a year. That's doable, doing what I want to do. And I also had, all these great plans, and I was going to make it better, and I was going to, get on the social medias. And because like I said, I didn't know the shop. So I really wanted to be able to, advertise it so people would know that it was here. And I thought I could make another 10 grand by, having all these events and doing this. And that was my idea in January 2020.
There's going to be a whole genre, I think, of jokes. And, I made this decision and it was 2020. So let me ask the question then. What's it been like over the last couple of years? Now, you are in Perth, which for people outside of Australia has had fewer lockdowns and restrictions than, for instance, I lived in Melbourne, where we had much stricter lockdowns for a longer period of time. Nonetheless, it's still been 2020 and 2021 for you. What's that been like for you as a business?
Well, I mean, you're right about the lockdowns. We definitely didn't have the lockdowns you guys had, but I think people just put themselves in self-isolation. Like there wasn't official lockdowns, but basically come March 2020, the number, like February 2020 was fantastic and had all these plans, and I booked all these people to do events. And then come March 2020, we had, it was starting to get all this noise about what was going on. And the numbers just dropped off dramatically. Like they really, I was standing there, towards the end of March, and I'm thinking, what's the point of actually even opening? No one's even coming through.
Wow.
And it was about then that we had our first lockdown, and people were, had already locked themselves down by then anyway. So I think I shut the shop for about, I'm thinking it was about 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay.
Where it was just shut. And what I was doing was delivering. So I was doing home delivery. So,
great.
which was maybe making about $100 a day.
Yeah.
By I didn't have an online, I kind of had an online presence, but at that stage, but there wasn't I didn't have my inventory online or anything. So you couldn't go online and see what I had and buy online, that kind of thing. That's been done since then, but it hadn't been done at that stage because it was quite an expensive thing to do. So, I was making about $100 a day and, trying to come up with all these things to do online and trying to, get people's interest going. But, it was quite, but I wasn't that worried at the time. I thought, oh, well, it'll just be a few weeks and then it'll all be over and we'll get back to normal. It's, it's fine. It's give me a time to sort of think about what I'm going to do. But then, as you know, it's just kept going on, and we had lockdowns. And the big problem with my shop, and everyone kept saying, oh, but surely in a bookshop, you're going to be, everyone's going to be reading. There's going to be people wanting books, and that sounds great. But I think my shop might have been a lot of difference than other shops in that my main clientele are over 70. And I think that the over 70s were probably the most worried about, the disease, because they were the ones that were dying. So they've never really come back. And the part of my bookshop is I have 75 book clubs. I didn't have 75 book clubs when I started. I think it was a 50 book club. So I've built it up to 75 book clubs that use I have a library, so they borrow the books. But of course, in COVID times, they all went, oh, we're not going to meet because we'll all get sick. And they didn't know how to do Zoom meet. It's all too hard for them because they weren't online and all this kind of stuff. So that really sort of plummeted. And that was when I took over. She said to me, she was making $25,000 a year from the book clubs and about $10,000 a year from selling books. So it was my biggest part of my income. So that wasn't something that I could, I was delivering the book clubs books that were still meeting, but it wasn't something that, if they weren't meeting, there isn't much I could do about that. So, and then of course all my events that I had planned, all my big dream events and all these things I was going to do just got cancelled because nobody wanted to attend. And I must say, I haven't got that urge to, after 2 years of like having these thoughts and booking these things, I've just kind of, I think, I can't be bothered doing it anymore. I don't even want to think about it.
No,
it's not worth it.
It doesn't seem like there's all that much appetite, really. And again, especially amongst an older cohort for those sorts of things to be back yet.
No.
So that sounds like it's been really quite exceptionally hard, especially for the start of a business. So then what's kept you going? Are you still enthused about having the bookshop?
I am still enthused about it. I do love it. I really love it. And the other part of the bookshop is that it's not just a retail thing. It's not just about selling things and making money. And I never thought that I would be, making my fortune or anything. I don't think you could buy a bookshop thinking you were going to make lots of money. So, my idea of living on 35,000 a year, to most people is kind of like, why would you do that? Why would you work, that many hours and have all that stress and only make that kind of money? But it's more than that. It's about the community that you make, and it's about helping people. And I love it when children walk past the door and go, oh, it's a bookshop. And they just come in and they're almost like, oh, so excited. And then when people come in and they ask me for their recommendations and they go away with the book I've recommended and come back and say, oh, that was the most fabulous book. Thank you. It's those things rather than the money that what keeps me going, and that makes me want to do it. And I think that bookshops are more than just a retail shop. They are really provide something in a community that is not provided by a dress shop or a that kind of retail that you might normally think about. It's a lot more than that.
Which leads me to, I'm intrigued by the number of book clubs that you're facilitating. So obviously you kind of inherited many of them from the original bookshop.
Yep.
Is that because of the people in the area were interested in the book clubs? How have you added another 25 over the last couple of years, or less presumably, because of COVID?
Well, I've been fortunate. Last year, at the end of last year, there was a person that did that down in Mandurah, which is south of Perth, and he had been doing it for a long time and he stopped doing it. And I found out about this, so I kind of approached them and said, I'm doing the same thing if you want to come through me. And a lot of the book clubs have then joined mine instead, and I post to the country as well. So there's a lot of country groups came from that, so posting out to the country. And then of course word of mouth, because others who were doing that would tell others. And the other, and there was also, because I think the previous owner was sort of, I mean, she tried to sell it for a long time, and no one was interested because there was no money in it. So she had kind of wound down the book clubs, and that she wasn't putting any new books on for a long time. And I started by basically saying, I'm going to put new books on every quarter. So I put 3 new books on every quarter. And a lot of the old book clubs that did used to go through that, who had sort of dropped off because the books were old and they'd read everything, came back because they were like, oh, this is great because we'd read everything. So there was no point us going anymore. So I've really refreshed all the books, and I spent a lot of time finding books that I think would be suitable, and also trying to push their tastes a little bit. so I'm really enjoying that part of it, and that's going mainly well. And we don't have outbreaks, but at the moment they're all hanging in there. So most of them that have remained have decided, they've either worked out how to do it, either in a place with lots of air, or they, have learned how to Zoom. So they are all trying really hard. And I've also let them know I'm doing a monthly newsletter that keeps them up to date with what's happening, and let them know that I'm struggling, and some of them are just pay, even though we're not going to meet, we will, so it's really wonderful things that people are doing to keep it alive. And recently I also started, because there's a bookshop, used to be a bookshop in Perth called the Oxford Street Bookshop, which is in Leederville, which closed, I don't know how long ago, like 10, 15 years ago. And it's a much loved bookshop in a cafe strip area. But because of the rents, it just ended up shutting down. And just recently they they wanted to get started again. So they've done this, it's called buy me a coffee thing, where they're saying, if I can get this many people who will put down $5 a week, we will reopen.
Wow.
And I thought, what a fabulous idea. So they're doing like a not-for-profit bookshop that will be basically subscribers or members will keep it alive by paying $5 a month. And I thought, what a great idea. But what about the bookshops like mine who are struggling anyway? So I thought, well, I'll try that as well. So I started that about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago now. And so far I'm up to about $360 a month.
Wow.
To keep me open, that's just $5 per person. And there's just been such a great response for that. People just saying, we don't want you to go. We really love it being there. And, $5 a month is nothing, it's a coffee. And I kind of feel in a way that might be the future of bookshops, having kind of a membership that keeps the doors open, because as I said, there's no money in it. I mean, the rent that I pay is far in excess of any profit that I would make from the shop. And that's not going to go away. The rent's not going to go away. We only get a 40% markup on the books. So it is quite hard to make money, especially when you're competing against the Amazons and book depositories and everything of the world. And, the Targets who, people come in and say, oh, do you have such and such? Oh, yes, I've got that. How much is it? Oh, $32.99, which is the recommended retail price. Yeah. Oh, I can get it for $15 in Target. And, if people keep buying, and I probably would have done the same before I had a bookshop, but if people keep buying from Amazons and the Targets, they're really going to restrict the type of books that they're going to be able to buy, because Amazon is not going to have on their bestseller list any Australian books, because it's going to be dominated by Europe and America. Target's only going to put in those bestsellers from Europe and America. We're not going to be able to have these. We've got such fantastic authors in Australia, just amazing stuff that's coming out. But it's the booksellers like myself and others who read those books and then recommend them and hand sell them to the customers that keep our Australian authors, being able to sell their books, because Amazon's not going to be featuring them and that kind of thing. So it really needs retail shops, because people don't come in and say, oh, do you have the latest? Well, they might say, have you got the latest Tim Winton, or, the big names. But, the people the emerging writers, it's us who've read them and say, oh my God, this is so good, you've got to read it. That's what bookshops do. And we can really, those debut books that come through our hands are the ones that will become big, not because of Amazon and Book Depository and Target, but because of all the small independent bookshops introducing them to the readers.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought the point of a bookshop was now that you have been doing this for a couple of years, and you've just answered that question really eloquently. Yeah. So it's a very passionate call to support indie bookshops. So thank you for that. Yeah. So you've talked a bit about what's been difficult over the last couple of years. What's been something that has surprised you in a pleasant way over the last couple of years?
Maybe the government support that we've actually been given.
Right.
That's kept me going, and I mean, it's not huge amounts, but it's $3,000 here. So I think I had $3,000 this year and then $3,000 last year, and that's kind of like, yeah, they bloody should. And and the owners of the building that they gave us 3 months off without having to pay any rent, and the government's also basically paid for our electricity bills for like 2 years. I think we got $1,500 on electricity, which was about 2 years worth of bills. So it's those things that have actually surprised me, that we've got that much support. I certainly think there could be more, but that's been great. And surprised me, I don't know, I guess probably there's people coming in and saying how much they appreciate what I'm doing. And there's a real estate agent who never got that. We were evil. So that's what I love about it. I just love people coming in and saying, oh my God, your bookshop's so lovely. I love being in here, the feelings that it gives me. As soon as I walk in, I just feel so relaxed, and it's just such a great feeling. And thank you for what you do for us. It's just good to feel that, because I never felt that in real estate. I just love being part of a community and having that feeling that the community actually supports you and is as passionate about what you do as you are. And that has really surprised me, mainly coming from an industry where people only complain about you. Coming into an industry that people absolutely adore and love is just so wonderful.
Do you have a favourite part of your shop? Is there one section that you are particularly proud of, or that you particularly enjoy?
I love history. I've got my degree is in politics and history, so any historical stuff I just love.
Excellent.
Yes, I guess that's my passion. Also, novels. I love reading novels as well, especially historical fiction. So that would be my passion, is the history section, and I think I've got a pretty good one. But I guess in my shop, it's really 50-50. When I look at my figures, children's and fiction. So fiction's a big part of it, as you would believe. And also the children's section, which you might think, oh, it's a bit weird considering you've got sort of the over 70s, but they're buying for their grandchildren. And they're buying for their grandchildren because they want to get them off devices. They're buying for their grandchildren because they really want, they want to give them the books that their kids loved. So most of my children's fiction is also quite traditional and they like the classics and that kind of thing. I do put in, other things. Aboriginal work is not, I put it in there, but it just doesn't sell because, I don't know, it's quite a white, wealthy suburb. And there's a lot of, in the, especially young adult fiction at the moment, there's a lot about trans and gay. There's this very, very big thing at the moment, but I put that on, but it just doesn't get purchased because it's the grandparents buying for the grandchildren. And even if they are gay or trans, they really don't want to know about it. So, so that's it. The children's section is a very big part of my bookshop, and it's mainly because it's the grandparents coming in and buying. It's what they do. They buy the books for the children for their birthdays and for Christmas.
Guinevere, I have two final questions. The first is, what are you currently reading?
Oh my goodness. I've just finished a book, but I'm just about to pick up All That's Left Unsaid by Tracy Lien. I haven't read it yet, though, so I literally finished the book last night, and it was called The Book of Goose.
Oh,
I
wow.
couldn't tell you them. Yeah, I can find it. I could tell you that. Oh, there it is. The Book of Goose, and it is by Yi Young Lee, Yiyunli. So all new books. Probably the best book I've just read recently is Barbara Kingsolver's new book, which is called Demon Copperhead. And it's a retelling of David Copperfield, set in the Southern Appalachians in, I'd say, 1990s. And it's a lot to do with the opioid crisis in America.
Wow.
So absolutely fascinating. You don't have to have read David Copperfield. In fact, I had to keep going back and going, oh, yeah, she's following it. But it doesn't really matter. You don't even really need to know that. But it's so good. It's a big doorstopper of a book, but it was really, really good.
And final question is really, are there things that you would like listeners to know about the shop? Anything that you would like to promote at the moment?
Ooh. Well, something else that I've started doing since, trying to think of ways to make money. We have a book, subscription. So we have one of the subscriptions is for new release Australian books. So you can sign up and you get a new release Australian book once a month, along with chocolate, tea or coffee, bookmark, and a little gift in there as well. So that goes out every month. And we've also got our classic subscription where you get the Penguin classic, popular penguins, one of those, tea, coffee, gift, bookmark. And it's a great gift or just a great subscription for yourself. It goes out once a month. And I've got about 60 odd subscribers on that as well.
Fantastic. And I'll have a link to your website on my website once this comes out, so people can follow that and subscribe. That sounds fantastic. So thank you very much, Guinevere. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks very much.